How you doing? I'm back. That's right. I'm back. Take the glasses off to tell them I'm back. You gotta put them back on before I be struggling to see y'all tonight. How are you all doing? I am your host, Jaimir. I see we got some people trickling in already before the minute mark even start. Y'all know what time it is. Every night, 7 p.m. EST on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We'll be here, and that's great. We got a lovely guest, a lovely couple guests with us tonight. A greater topic, and you know what I'm saying, an even better family. And if you don't know what this is, got to get my fingers right. There it is. 2050 and beyond. That's right, where we take issues and subjects that have happened to Black people and Africans from history, and then we sort of, contextualize them, where I get me and my historical majoring friends, just sum things up a little bit, so that way we lay that firm, nice, steady groundwork for the contemporary discussion, which we'll have today. And then on Thursday, we take the fun part and we go to 2050 and beyond. That's right, just thinking about things, about what they'll be becoming and what they may be in the year 2050, as well as in the years afterwards, because that's what revolution is. It's a gradual process of handing off the baton. And that's why we here, we like to just, have a little, an open room, an imbongi session, if you will. If you get that, you get that. But just an open room discussion. So I'm glad seeing everybody just sort of trickling in and having a great night with us. But before we can get ready for this discussion, this contextualizing, this history, you know what I'm saying? Before we get ready for that, we tend to have a little bit of a callback to someone who's great and phenomenal. And that right there is this affirmation from Shania.
Greetings, virtual villagers. My name is Shania, and do you know what time it is? It's affirmation time! Time to remind ourselves how great we are. So everybody, repeat after me. I am smart. I have purpose. I am confident. I am valuable. My voice is worthy of being heard. I am an asset to my family, school, and community. I respect myself and I respect others. I am beautifully made inside and out. I love my beautiful hair and I love my beautiful brown skin. I am more than enough. Great job, virtual villagers. Can I get a virtual high five? Great job. And always remember how fantastic you are.
You are. That's right. You're fantastic. And we always want to start off with that call back to Shania's affirmation, because this is what one of the main missions of CCIA is: culturally affirming literature, to affirm each other's Blackness and to affirm each other in life and living, because that way everyone grows together, everybody's successful, and everybody's family together. And I see that we have some people, how you doing, Miss Nichols, with great evening, CCIA family. It's a great evening. We even better than good. So that's absolutely fantastic. And we got Miss Star here, my favorite show on this here internet's right here, and I'm glad to see Miss Star is with us. But before we get into this discussion, before we get into this contextualizing of the issue, we'd like to sort of pay homage, to an Africana revolutionary. We do this every week. The first week, it was the great Kwame Ture. Second week, it was the pioneering Oscar Micheaux. And this week, who do you believe? It's the first Black woman in America to run for the office of president. That's right, Charlene Mitchell. Many people would believe it's actually Shirley Chisholm, and Shirley Chisholm was the first African-American woman to run for president on a major party ticket. But let's get into a little bit about Miss Charlene Mitchell. So, born in Cincinnati, Ohio in 1930, Charlene Mitchell is an often overlooked trailblazer in American history. Mitchell was born in Cincinnati, but was raised in the city of Chicago. So big ups to the city of Chicago right there. She's one of you guys. Her parents were Black people migrating northward during the Great Migration, where upon reaching Chicago, they joined the Communist Party, like many other Black people outside of the American South. Here, Mitchell would grow up following in her parents' footsteps and joined the American Youth for Democracy, which was the youth wing of the Communist Party at the time, after a name change due to pressures from the federal government. In the 1950s and 60s, Mitchell would become one of the most influential members of the Communist Party and basically in Black radical politics at the time, where she would connect the predominantly white Communist Party with Black labor activists within America, as well as reaching out to countries across and around the African diaspora and other developing countries. So we see her corresponding with Black people in South America, with South Africa, India, London, and everywhere in between. And then Mitchell was a Black woman who was one of the leaders of the national movement of Black people towards leftist politics and international unity. She would then go on to reach national fame when in 1968, that's right, at just 38 years old, she was nominated. That's right, nominated. The party put their whole weight behind her to run for president along with the National Youth Director, Michael Sagarel. The national media mocked Mitchell and felt that she was a joke candidate, given that she was Black and a woman. But Mitchell understood that her campaign wasn't about garnering votes, but about reaching people. She used her campaign to boost political education in the several communities she visited and to teach them about alternatives to the issues that have plagued the country. She wasn't interested in being president, she was interested in opening the people's minds. Charlene Mitchell is an Africana revolutionary because she knew that offering feasible alternatives to people would be one of the first steps to energizing Black people to exercise their political power in a way that was beneficial to Black people everywhere. Even though she faced extreme adversity, that never deterred her from her mission of political education. She's currently still living and continuing her mission of getting others to envision a better life. And as we can see, got Mr. Tanya here. How you doing, Mr. Biss? That's great. And then we also see let me start back again. I need viewers to know that Jaimir, that's me, and my co-host, we're all only 18 years old. So we're very young, but there's many jokes about us being old people or time travelers. So, age is really up in the air for a lot of us. And will there be a Kwanzaa series? Actually, there will be a Kwanzaa series, which we'll see with the main CCIA, so stick around on that. And I'll also still be pushing my work here. So we got you covered on all bases. We got you covered, Ms. Jones. But that's a little bit about Charlene Mitchell. And for those of you who don't know, that's exactly what she looks like. And she's a great woman. And if you know how to reach her, make sure you do and send her well wishes and just letting her know that not only did she break the glass ceiling, but she also energized the populace. And after that, I think we're going to take a little bit of a tour to get a word from our sponsors.
Buying or selling a home doesn't have to be difficult. At the James Allen Group, we work tirelessly to get families into homes and to get our listings sold quickly at the best price. James Allen, our principal broker, has over 30 years of experience as a realtor. As a U.S. Navy veteran, his knowledge of Hampton Roads and its community is a vital tool in meeting the home buying needs of military families. If you're ready to buy or sell your home, contact the James Allen Group at 757-449-8322. Sign up today for our free home buyer or seller seminar at jamesallengroup.com.
Jumbo, how you doing? So now that we've heard a word from our sponsors, and after we got that great word of affirmation from Shania, and a little bit to satisfy our historical palate with Charlene Mitchell, now we have sort of an introduction to what we'll be speaking about this week. That's right, it's Black electoral politics, which is really, a great time to be doing that, given the recent. This was an election year, and there's been a lot of fire and fury surrounding that. Especially a lot of praise given that Kamala Harris is a biracial woman with a Jamaican father who is now going to be VP. So, a lot of people are very excited about election season. So why not give a grounding of electoral politics in America? But you know what time it is. I think before we get into that, I'm gonna need a little bit of assistance. So I'm gonna bring in my good friend. You've all seen him before. I mean, he's been here for last like 4 shows or something like that. That's right. It's my friend Joseph, also known as Jody. How you doing,
How y'all
bro?
doing? I'm
All right,
doing great. How about you, Jamir?
I'm great, man. Got the whole turban on. Got this new, like this new robe and everything. Just a little
Yeah, I
something.
like it.
But never forgetting where I came from. Never forgetting that. The illustrious Howard University, the only HBCU that does what it does the way it does. So, with that right there, let's get into this history a bit. So, first things first, when we talk about Black electoral politics, we really got to understand that it sort of predates what many would suspect, because Black electoral politics didn't start in 1870 with the 15th Amendment. It pretty much predates many of what Europeans would consider democracy. And you got to go all the way back to ancient Africa. And it's a really good book, The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams. Comprehensive book, really is. And it talks about this African tradition in the sense that the African concepts of democracy and African absolutism are greatly different from Western concepts of it. And it looks like Jody got Teddy Riley. Wait a minute, you here? I think you moved, but I'm not sure. The FBI might have got to him again. Yep, I knew it. I told you. I knew it. So we're gonna put one up for Jody, and we're gonna keep it going and just hope that wherever he is now in the great cyberspace beyond, that he is covered by the spirit of Africana energy. But like I was saying, folks, and that's all that happens, technical difficulties. We've all been on our computers for the past like 30 years with COVID going on. So the internet is kind of getting a little bit broken, but we've been breaking the internet too. So the Africana spirit of democracy is that leaders all derive their powers from the people. There was a great sense of communal leadership, in the sense that the leader was just a mouthpiece or a figurehead for the voices of the people. And that's really something that's cool that I wanted to start things off with, because then we understand that all forms of democracy after that are just variations of things that Black people had created first. And I did mention earlier with the 15th Amendment, where in 1870, Black men were given the right to vote, and they voted predominantly Republican because that was the party of Lincoln. And then, but just because it was Black men voting, there was also a strong sense of communal leadership and communal political energy. So when Black men voted, they also voted with their wives and children in mind, in the sense. So it was more of a joint vote instead of just a singular vote. And during this 1870 period, we see Black people energize themselves in America, and that is a period known as Reconstruction, where Black people were elevated to all types of statuses in the state legislature and really making moves and progress. And it was great. It was a great time just seeing all of this Black enterprise and Black political just power and wealth. It was absolutely fantastic. But unfortunately, there weren't many protections. So many Black people who were voting at the time were put into terrible situations with the white supremacy and domestic terrorism going on, and they were killed for exercising this right. And after the Compromise of 1877, the Black vote greatly diminished due to the fact that Black people weren't protected by the federal government, nor were the federal troops in America or in the American South anymore. So after that, things go downhill, and it isn't until the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that ensures Black people, both men and women, are able to vote at large with federal protection again. So we see nearly 100 years it takes for Black people to go back through this serfdom, or this servitude in a sense, and just have all of that political energy just snapped away. Then, before 1965, a major part of pushing that Voting Rights Act was the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, created in 1964 and headed by Fannie Lou Hamer, who we all, give much love and respect to, and also Brother Moses as well, who helped organize that down in the Mississippi Delta. And they organized, got Black people registered to vote once more, and they pushed their own political party alongside the Democratic Party and had their own elections, because these areas were predominantly Black. So All they had to do was just register to vote for themselves, and they had the votes. But they did so at great risk. Many people were fired from their sharecropping jobs, as well as many people were murdered just for trying to exercise their vote. But that did not stop or deter Black people. But this is a Pan-African programming. This is a diaspora-wide programming. So we're not just going to stay within, the confines of the nation state known as the United States. We're going to go outside of that a little bit. And when I say a little bit, I mean a lot of it. Because during the 60s was an energetic time for Black people all over the world. And around this time, Black countries, African countries were gaining their independence from their European overlords. And we see Ghanaian president in Kwame Nkrumah. He starts the push for African independence really in 1957 until he's overthrown about 9 years later in 1966 with a U.S. sponsored coup, and he's moved. But he sort of goes and links arms with Sekou Touré, who was president of Guinea from 1958, and they lead on as co-presidents, and that's the true sense of brotherhood there. As well as in 1960, Patrice Lumumba was prime minister for 7 months, and it's truly unfortunate because Lumumba spoke out heavily against European imperialism and also watching out for the exploitation of African resources, and he was thus assassinated again by the U.S. sponsored coup, as well as the Belgians, as well as people within the Congo at the time who sort of wanted to enrich themselves and not the country. So, but still, Black people were elevating ourselves and our leaders and putting the best of us forward. And that's truly one of the things that scares a lot of these white supremacists. And then around the same time during the 60s, there were several Black people who were leaders of their nominally independent countries. And the list goes on because this was the age of revolution, the age of independence for Africa and the Caribbean. So we see a lot of these Black leaders come into power, but the power was really them just being the Pinocchio to Europe's Geppetto, if that makes sense. And how you doing, Miss Lori? How you doing, Miss Tiffany? Glad you're here. Glad you're here with us. We're just getting into this historical ground in a bit. And I think, we're about to get into away from the continent a little bit and get into Haiti. So back in the Caribbean in 1990. So back in 1990 in Haiti, John Bertrand Aristide, I hope I said that right. My French is poor, as you all know. I speak English in like broken Swahili from time to time. We'll work on it. But John Bertrand is elected president by the Haitian people. He is overthrown by the U.S. once again in a coup just 7 months later, similar to Lumumba, because of the United States belief that he would create a Marxist country similar to Cuba. And you see a recurring theme here where Black leaders who are pushing away from, leaning on to European support or American support or any sort of Western support, they sort of are met with extreme animosity, as you see with many of them. Thomas Sankara was another leader, but he rose to power through a military coup, not the same as electoral politics we talk about, but we will get into him later. So make sure you tune in. And then one of our last electoral leaders is a little name by the name of Nelson Mandela, who was freed from a prison in South Africa, where he then goes on in 1994, marking the believed or hoped end of European rule in Africa. And basically, Mandela is rehabilitated by Western media to appear as this great hope in the end of all Western meddlings in Africa, and he is lauded greatly. So that right there is South Africa. And then moving back to the U.S. recently for us, in 2008, Barack Hussein Obama is elected president, being the first person with African descent in the country to be elevated to the status of president. And that was monumental for many people. I remember I was a young boy and I was just, really excited to see a Black person in high places. And in 2020, with Kamala Harris being VP, many people are also excited in seeing that same story and tale spin out. But I believe that the FBI has finally gotten off of Jody and he might be able to come back. But are you back with us, brother?
I am back with us, brother.
Thank you, my king. Thank you.
The man, I won't name the man, but the man does not want to see young Black people speak about Black
No,
electoral.
they do not.
What's
No,
going
they
on?
do not.
They don't. But I should be good now. I regained my internet connection, so we should be fine for the rest of the show.
Cool. So, did you have anything to add to our historical grounding, knowing that you are a historical genius? That's Eric right there. Then we got Mimi here. Oh, how you doing, Matt? All right, I see you. We also have Kimmy here. So, the Bison Brigade is sort of, waging in. We also have Miss Keisha Beige talking about the both of us, I presume, wisdom beyond our years. And, it's just what we do here. But do you have anything to add, my brother?
It depends. What have you already touched on? Because I was kind of out with the.
So they black-sided you. See, that's what we deal with here. Just like the CIA, FBI, government, COINTELPRO intervention here. So a lot of the times when we start going, the government tries to use the cyberspace to put a wedge between us and diminish that information, but it won't happen. So basically, I covered how Black people got the right to vote. Well, Black men got the right to vote in 1870. We pushed that on to, the failure of Reconstruction, how then in 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed. Now, Black people have been able to vote with impunity, hopefully, since then. But as we know, in contemporary society, voter suppression is still rampant. And as we continued, I spoke about Nkrumah, as well as Lumumba, as well as Touré, and also mentioned John Bertrand Aristide. I hope I'm saying that right. He's Haitian. So if you know how to say it, let me know. But y'all don't know, Jody's family is from Haiti. So that diasporic element there. And then I rounded out with Barack in 08 and Kamala in 2020. Go Bison.
Yeah, it sounds like you touched on, the prospect of Black electoral politics in the West and the global South but just adequately. One thing that I noticed was missing from there, which is my favorite era in Black electoral politics, simply because of how profound the situation was, but post Civil War Black electoral politics, because it's a part of politics and political history that goes very unsaid, underwritten. So basically, I want to point out a couple of my favorite politicians from that era, if that's okay with you. That's
Go ahead. That's why you here. You hear this.
Okay, so
you got it.
I want to point out the first elected senator, the first Black elected senator in the United States after the Civil War, which was a man by the name of Blanche Kelso Bruce. I believe that he was based in Kentucky. I may very well be wrong, but he was the first senator to serve a term that was Black in the United States. Another person, PBS Pinchback, he was the first Black governor of Louisiana. And then my personal favorite from South Carolina is a man by the name of Robert B. Elliott, who was elected to the House of Representatives in 1867. He is the man. In 1867, that was the first time in American history that the House of Representatives ever had a Black majority in the state of South Carolina, and he was a part of that. So that's a pretty cool tidbit of history. As you know, in 1877, when Rutherford B. Hayes came around, that entire Reconstruction thing, Black Reconstruction thing, kind of fell apart. But today, we're kind of getting back into it. Whether that's for better or worse is going to be discussed later in the show. But yeah.
Man, if y'all don't know, this is the reason why Jody's on the show. Because he lays back into it, but then he'll just just be my top 3 Reconstruction era Black politicians, and then just go from it. And then just sort of walk away from it. Man. But like Jody said, that's what we're gonna get into soon. And that'll be sooner rather than later, because right now we have a couple of these advertisements for you. And then we'll get right back into this discussion with a couple of our guests. So
hey everyone, it is Tasha Turnbull here, owner of T2 Fitness, and I am bringing to you all the Homebody Series. The Homebody Series was created because we are now more so at home, but guess what? I want us to feel connected. I want us to feel strong together. I want us to sweat together, and I want us to build our healthiest bodies possible. So we're going to be bringing you live workouts that you can do in the mornings, in the evenings, on the weekends, anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes. They're going to be low impact workouts, high impact workouts, but guess what? what? No matter what your fitness level is, all workouts are going to be able to accommodate wherever you are along your fitness journey. So make sure you join us because we need to work out, we need to be strong, and we can do this all from home.
I'm back. I'm back. And I'm also back with Jody. But Jody, like you said, about to get into this a little bit deeper. And it might seem a little bit smaller here today for those of you who've noticed. We are missing a sort of gigantic presence if you've been watching the show. Sort of, just like a sun that sort of shines brightly at all times, even when you hope it was night. That's right. Obi couldn't be with us tonight, but we're still gonna push through with his presence not here because we can just feel him just adding to the discussion as we speak. So to sort of substitute that, I got a couple of people coming in. First we have my good friend. But this is a throwback for those of you who was with me in those virtual village days, back when we was in the trenches, and this is the inspiration for the discussion style panel. And youth activist, gun rights and gun legislation activist, as well as Clark Atlanta University student, psychology major, Abu Unity pioneer. The list goes on. That's right. For those of you who don't know, we have Kalia.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. I'm glad to be back. I missed this so much. It's nice to see everybody.
I'm glad you're here with us, man. Like, I'm just happy to have you here. Oh, how you been?
I've been amazing. Just like you said, just been moving, working, trying to get used to this new virtual world with all this stuff going on. Just trying to see how advocacy can fit into all this virtual stuff going on. How have y'all been?
You've been great. Miss Star done missed you. Said,
Hey, Miss Star.
Back. We've been good, chilling, college. Yeah. It's college, but
HBCU
pushing through it. But that's not all we have. You know what I'm saying? We got a little bit of a quartet here. Think of the Three Musketeers plus one, if you will. We got my friend from Howard. It's my boy. Another thing about the virtual medium that's really great is you meet all these different people that you wouldn't even suspect meeting. And that's exactly what happened when we got Donro here. How you doing, bro?
What's going on? Thank you for having me.
Just happy to be here. Happy to chop shop with y'all a little bit. And now that the room is a little bit full, I can sort of like take a step back from it a bit and sort of do. Jody got sniped again. I said the room was full and he was about to do. Oh, okay, cool. Covered. You're covered, brother. You covered. So I get to take a step back a little bit and I get to do what Kalia used to do. So once again, he's gonna be, room is full for now. We'll see how this plays out though. But I get to do what Kalia used to do, sort of propose questions and musings and ramblings here. And if y'all didn't know, you weren't watching the time, we did great on time right now. We coming in at just under 30 minutes. So I get to sort of like chop it up with y'all for about an hour, bro. It's a straight blessing. And I get to talk about one of my favorite topics, man. I love Black electoral politics, especially in the case of the U.S., because we just get to sort of see things differently and hear other people. So for one, I'll start with, let's go with it. So understanding the historical context of Black men obtaining the right to vote in 1870, and then sort of ensuring that right in 1965, do you believe that progress for Black people has changed since 1965 with the implementation of Black politicians and the insurance of the Black vote with the federal government? We do have a hand-raising system here and there, but the discussion is very free-flowing. And if you raise your hand like this, I promise you I'll see you and I get to you when there's a little bit of a lull or when it picks up. So who wants to go first, champ? I knew it. Go ahead, pimp.
I'm weak, but as far as the change and shift between when Black men first got the right to vote all the way back in those days to now, I feel like there's been a shift in the amount of fighting that has been going on within those political spheres, as far as just having a Black voice at the table, somebody who can truly advocate on behalf of Black people in all the different sectors of the policy realms, whether it be for the marginalized communities, whether it be fighting against redlining, whether it be fighting for equality and equitable pay, whether it be for advocating for human rights. Just having that type of voice in the political sphere was imperative, and then was something that was brought forth with the Voting Rights Act. And then as we move forward into like the 19th Amendment and we get into women's suffrage and getting women into political office, we always hear about the Elizabeth Cady Stantons and the Susan B. Anthonys, but we never really hear about the Ida B. Wells and the Black suffragists who were there and who were fighting for us and was fighting for Black women to get the right to vote. So I feel like it's imperative that if we're talking about Black politics and Black political culture, that we talk about how hard it was for us to even get the right to vote, to even get the right to be in office, and those impediments that came from back then. But yeah, I feel like those openings definitely were the gateway for us to get into political power.
I got you. And then Jody, I saw you, and then Don Roy, I got you right after.
Okay, so before I butt in, when Kalia mentioned Ida B. Wells, I noticed, Jameer, that you kind of, put your Howard shirt up. By the way, if we're talking about HBCU love, I do want to mention, not to be technical or anything, Ida B. Wells went to Fisk University, just like W.E.B. Du Bois did, and just like Charles H. Wesley did. But as far as political advancement in the Black community since the Civil Rights Act of 1965 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, I honestly don't believe that there has been as much progress as Black people in the United States would like to see. There was actually a report that came out in the Post a couple years ago, or just very recently, and it was actually noted that a lot of like schools from K to 12 are more segregated than they were like during the Jim Crow era.
Yeah, man.
And everybody knows about how like schools are ran by property taxes, and everybody knows about like the Black and white wealth gap in America, where like the average.
What if you didn't know? Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm about to. So
okay, appreciate it.
I'm about to. So basically, the fact of the matter is, right now in the United States, like as we speak, the average Black family, their net worth is about $17,000. For the average white family in the United States, that is $170,000. So basically, a white family in the United States just has 10 times the amount of wealth as a Black family in the United States. And that isn't what any of the civil rights activists in the 60s and beforehand and after to this day envisioned for America. I think that they believed at this point there would be more parity economically, socially. There wouldn't be, 2 million Black men sitting in jails. There wouldn't be so many Black women as like compared to, their white and POC counterparts in jail. We didn't envision any of that. That is not what we saw like life being in the United States in the year of 2020. And Jameer, you were going to speak?
Yeah, because when you spoke about the wealth, was that the average or the median?
I'm not sure. I think it's probably more so the median, not just the average then.
All right. Appreciate it. And then Don Roy, down to you, sir.
I wanted to add onto that I agree that we certainly haven't, especially since 1965, we haven't seen the progress as Black Americans as we would like to have seen. I would like to agree with Kalia a little bit that there has been change. You can see certain things have shifted. But because mostly since 1965, we have been looking towards the electoral realm, I don't know, mostly if I can quantify that, but in large part, we have been looking for change in through electoralism. The changes that we've been getting have not been long-lasting, have not been structural. So if you elect a new president, incarceration is still proliferating. Or if you elect a new senators, they're still sending $800 billion to the Pentagon every year, and they're still drone striking several countries in Africa. They're still adding new military bases to the continent, and they're still not taking care of Black Americans. They're not giving us health care. They're not giving us anything. And even if we are getting crumbs off the table, at the end of the day, it's just crumbs off the table. What we have in the United States of America is racialized capitalism, meaning that it's capitalism that is based off the subjugation of black people. Race was kind of an invention, right? Race was invented in order for white people to be able to other people on the African continent and then use them as slave labor over in the North American continent. That's exactly what happened. And we are dealing with the ramifications of that today. And I think that looking towards electoralism does not properly address or redress that in any way, shape, or form. So every time we have an election, it's just different. Not even, I can't even say it's a different form of racial capitalism. It's just advancing racial capitalism.
Spit that.
Go ahead,
Spit that.
Hey, I was gonna say something. I'm gonna just let the comments speak, because that's how I felt when he got into that second sentence, and then he just kept going like, woo. So
He was on a roll, spoke a
I was
word.
chilling. I was trying to ease y'all into it because Khalil a little rusty, and Dara, you ain't never did this before. You've been gone for how many months, bro? I was trying to do like a simple question, just to see, it was just a simple like, have we progressed here? And then y'all was like, nah, let's go to the deep end. And also, before we go to the deep end, since that's what y'all want to do tonight, I'm totally fine with it. Miss Portia, giving you your props, you know what I'm saying? And that's great.
Thank you, Miss Portia. Thank
You're
you.
looking real good, but you could look a little bit better if you had something like this on you. But I'm sorry, I can't read that, unfortunately.
I'm sorry. I don't think you saw the historically black agenda going on right here. I'm sorry.
Only H's are mess with when it comes to historically is Howard, but
I'm sorry. Cursing on live is just really not what we do. This can't happen anymore. I'm sorry.
I just don't understand where all this animosity is coming. But the Bison are here. The Bison are present. HU, there it is. There it is. I told you we present. We're in the storehouse of knowledge tonight, and I getting back on to what we was getting into. There it is. I told you the Bison are present, not just on the show, but we also in the comments. We rolling deep. And for those of you who are tuning in, we just getting in, so don't forget to like and subscribe. Is also just share it, let people know, come in and fellowship with us. That's another and you know what to do. So spread that word out so this HBCU thing can grow. And we were talking about how we should be helpful and not helpful but thankful for where we've come. Kalia, you mentioned a little bit on the exclusion of Ida B. Wells from mainstream women's suffrage movements. Don Roy, you spit a word on racial capitalism as well as electoral politics being sort of a hamster wheel of sorts. And this is how we get into the deep end, where the question has to be asked: do you think that the political energies or the political goals of the Black masses, in the sense of Black people at large, are co-opted by Black leaders and sort of funneled into their aspirations, and therefore the Black people aren't actually, our material needs aren't met, but the desires of this Black elite class are also satisfied, as well as the American superstructure we reside in is sort of appeased, in the sense that nothing gets done. This is Brother Don Roy said, this whole America thing gets pushed and pulled basically on the labor of Black people. So do you guys think that there's a co-opting of Black energy? And this is like a softball too.
A softball?
Yeah, it's a softball.
So yes, and yes again. I feel like our messages are always co-op. And like Jamir mentioned before, I do advocate for gun violence prevention and gang violence prevention. And so this summer-ish, I had the pleasure of being on a Transforming Policing, Reimagining Policing coalition. And so the person that runs my district is Black. I have a Black delegate and a Black congressman, as well as Black senator. But when we proposed legislation that was radical in the sense of defunding the police, reallocating funds into things like the school system, because like Jody said, property taxes is what funds school, but because of the racial wealth gap, Black schools are always going to be underfunded because there's no ownership in Black communities. So, like I said, I had the pleasure of being on the coalition, and we proposed legislation that went up to our legislators. And when we got the legislation back to see what they had came up with, what the House and what the Senate had came up with in their chambers as they amended it, the legislation that we sent forth was not the legislation that we got back. Things were so watered down, things were so co-op, things were just not what we envisioned it to be. And so it's like we have these people in place, but when they get into the chambers and they have to hear what their colleagues are saying and they have to negotiate down, most of the time Black legislation gets negotiated down and co-opted and watered down so that it can appease all aspects of what is going on in there. So even though we have the opportunity and the ability to be in office, and we have the opportunity and ability to change and propose legislation, if it's not a lot of like-minded people within those chambers, our message will always be watered down. Our message will always be co-opted because our message is so simple, but yet so powerful. It's so minuscule and so, I guess, so plain. It's just equality, equity, but because we're such a powerful people, it's so radical. It's so change making. It's so it just shakes the room every time. But yes, I feel like our messages are always co-op.
I forgot I was muted. I saw you, Donald. You got it, you.
All right, I have a word to that because I think that the message is simple, right? We want equality. We want to be like fully recognized human beings and liberation, which is what we're not getting. I think though, I don't think I can call it something like small or minute to say that, because everything in and about this country is in direct opposition, diametric opposition to Black people being fully realized like human beings, right? So, like, from the genesis of this country, from the jump, it was all about subjugating Black people. So if you come along and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't subjugate the Black people, but we should amplify their voices and make sure that they feel worthy of life and know that they are worthy of life, then that is going to be seen as something that is completely radical. Like, this is why this is kind of a different point, but this is why the state has a complete like monopoly on violence, right? Because if we say, if the state wants to say police can have guns, police can shoot Black people as much as they would like to, because that is in the protection of white property and whiteness. That's good. But if a Black person says, I'm not going to put up with that, and I'm going to go to Target and burn that down to the ground, then that is a problem. That sort of violence is a problem. But when the state does it to us, then that is perfectly fine. And I guess to the question of our messages being co-opted, we saw that especially this summer, with Black Lives Matter kind of getting mainstreamed. And I don't see a problem with many people seeing a message like that and wanting to be a part of it. What I do see a problem with is popular liberal politicians lying about it, right? So so we saw a person like Joe Biden, the author basically of mass incarceration. Well, I can't call him the author of mass incarceration because it was a collaborative effort of the United States government to make sure that we incarcerated Black people. However, a main contributor to mass incarceration, Mr. Joseph R. Biden, saying something like Black Lives Matter in and of itself it just seems like a lie, like a farce. He's just saying it out loud. And it was so clear to me. I think it was, oh my goodness. And this is tragic because there's so many, we lose so many people to police violence that I can't even remember the name. It was Walter Wallace, Philadelphia. After the police killing of Walter Wallace in Philadelphia this summer, the Biden Harris campaign released a statement that was basically like, police shootings are bad, but don't burn down any buildings. Rioting, that dilutes. You can't do that. You can't say that. So they used passive voice to condemn. Not they didn't even actually condemn police. They used passive voice to bring up the fact that there was a police shooting, and then they use active voice to tell black people to literally police black people and say, "Don't go out here and react to the horrible treatment that you are being subjected to on a day-to-day basis."
Hey, Joe, you got it, but I don't know if there's much to get, bro.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna point out like there's not a few. I have a couple examples of this co-opting that he was talking about by like popular white liberal politicians, because one thing that he mentioned when he was speaking that happened this summer as well was, when the defund the police slogan became popular, a lot of liberal politicians also co-opted it and acted like they were in support of the movement when we really don't know if that was true, because even the Minnesota mayor that like was called to, and they called him out to the city, and he was like, no, I'm not going to defund police, and instead like put out this council. But I want to point out that wasn't it just the other day that Joe Biden was on a panel of like civil rights activists, and this was like, I believe, like members of the NAACP and other organizations, which aren't even like that left, and they don't really demand that much. He basically just berated them on camera and was like, I've done this and this and this, and you need to be accepting of this and this and this, because I'm not going to do any more, and I'm not going to, like heed your demands. It's also just telling that Black Lives Matter had like a large part in his election, and he co-opted like the Black Lives Matter organization throughout like his entire campaign. And then didn't it come out like after he was elected that he'd been ignoring their emails, they never got a seat at the table, and they had to write a letter to him asking why like they never got a seat at the table. So they realized that the Black struggle, and they realized that like Black demands are popular. They realized that they may even be necessary, but since it's an antithetical to like, this country's power structure, since it's antithetical to like the entire structure of it at all, they can't really heed these demands. They can't really give us what we want, because then what happens to your American empire? You don't have an American empire anymore. It's gone. Like everything that it was based upon is now flipped on its head. So yeah, I definitely agree. This co-opting thing isn't good, and we're gonna have to like find ways around it.
Dang, I'm happy.
Y'all are amazing. If nobody else is gonna say it, I'm gonna say it. Y'all are amazing. Y'all are spitting tonight. I love this.
Don Roy, Jody, like I'm chilling. This is what I envisioned the show to be. Like this is just great. Like it's great every week, but this is just hitting different. And we talked about co-opting, and I wanted to just sort of like elaborate a little bit, because basically the Black Lives Matter movement was co-opted in itself, in a sense that it's BLM originally meant Black Liberation Movement. The Black Lives Matter was, because after Michael Brown was murdered,
I didn't even know that.
After Michael Brown was murdered, many activists out there in St. Louis, in that area, they went on and they were like, we've had enough. And the Black Liberation Movement was started. And a little thing about this, but as it gained popularity, which all Black movements tend to do, there was a certain class of striver, or elite Black people, who decided that the tone was a little too harsh, and that it wouldn't fit in with what they were trying to do with their careers. So it became the Black Lives Matter movement, which is a lot more passive than Black Liberation Movement, and it's a lot more palatable to white people. And the reason why I want to bring this up is that you mentioned that these BLM activists, national activists, they went and they sort of spoke on the fact that they emailed Joe Biden and they didn't get a seat at the table. And you have to understand that these people are extreme opportunists, because what started out as Black people burning down police precincts and protesting in the streets became a go out to vote for Joe, and they turned the murders of our Black brothers and sisters by the state as fuel for them to get a position. And when that didn't happen, because once a segregationist, always a segregationist, then you don't see that you don't see that happening again. And to go further into, because I mentioned segregation, and this has been on my mind for a minute, when we talk about co-opting of language, Martin Luther King Jr. is probably the biggest black person to be co-opted since Jesus, bro. Like, turn Martin Luther King Jr.'s whole presence into a linking of arms with white people and completely ignored that he advocated for a UBI. He also was a part of the same school as A. Philip Randolph, who advocated for federal jobs. That means there will be no unemployment within the country. And also, Martin Luther King Jr. was an advocate for desegregation, not fully integration. That's the thing. There is a difference. And I remember because Kalia and Q, one day after a show, we spoke to this about Mr. Jordan, and we sort of laid out that integration and desegregation are two separate entities, but they get coupled together. And people believe that integration was the goal of Black people at the time. And it must be stated, Black people in America, nor anywhere else, have never advocated nor wanted to be with white people in a sense that they wanted to be within white spaces. They just wanted to be respected if they just happened to be in a white space. That's what desegregation meant. And we see that this integrationist logic here is now used in all forms of movements, and which gets us back to the Black Lives Matter movement in the sense that it's not about the police are going to stop murdering us. It's more so about, well, what does Joe think that I should be doing in his presidency? Another thing about the National Black Lives Matter movement is that the national organization is not the same as the grassroots organization. There are many BLM activists who have gone out and stated, if you're going to give any of your money to BLM, do it through the chapters, not the overarching branch, because there is no real Black Lives Matter national branch. It is just a cyber entity of Black elite liberals, or in not even liberals, if you want to be honest with it. These are just Black capitalists who are using Black people as cannon fodder to climb a ladder here. But there are many activists who've gone out and spoken out against the national branch, the national organization, because all of the money that goes to Black Lives Matter through the national org doesn't get back to the grassroots organizing. And I mentioned the grassroots for a reason, because that'll be our next question. But they don't receive any of the funding. And keep in mind, this has been a thing that's been going on since Michael Brown was murdered. So all of the funds that we've seen, all of the white guilt money that was given to Black people, all of the corporate placating tears and dollars, all of that didn't go to help anyone. And it all summed up into a get out to vote movement for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who both helped incarcerate Black people for simple things such as having marijuana or other nonviolent crimes, which nonviolent offenses make up most of those who are incarcerated. So with that, do you have anyone to add before we get into this next question about grassroots? I'm having fun today, guys. I'm having fun. I got a whole hour just to do this, man. I got a whole hour just to do this. And next question, because we did mention the grassroots chapters here, and we talked about the Black Lives Matter movement. We talked about Black electoral politics not really benefiting us in the ways that we'd hoped or anyone had envisioned. And we got into the discussion a little bit about things and just pertaining in that sphere. But we understand that when it comes to electoral politics, they tell us the base of any democracy is the people, which is exceptionally true. Before you build a nation, before you build a state, before you build an organization even, you start with a collection of people striving for a common interest. And when it comes to Black people in America, who make up roughly 13% of the country, scattered around, but mostly concentrated in the South, we have a weird relationship when it comes to organizing, in a sense that whenever we do organize, it's met with extreme violence from the state, and it's also co-opted, as we spoke on. But in the contemporary, the fire that we saw over the summer, the organic fire, there was no orchestrating of that. Unfortunately, it was co-opted, but the spirit was there. We've seen it happen time and time again. So this is one of my favorite parts. There's a reason why Charlene Michelle was here, in the sense that I'm sitting up in the chair too, so you know I'm about it. But when it comes to grassroots organizing, Kalia, you understand that. And when it comes to political education, what is one of the most effective ways to reach Black people, not just us, like high school, college, young adults, but Black people in a sense of those who come after us and those who come before us, to directly organize in their communities to make the community self-sufficient. So that way there isn't as much stress on the day-to-day quotidian life, so that they'll be able to think fully toward grander electoral schemes.
So I got you.
You raise your hand. You was just about to jump into it, huh?
Yeah, because this one definitely hits.
This your niche. This your niche.
Yeah. So
Go ahead.
one thing about organizing Black communities, we are often the most impacted, and a lot of the times when it comes to organizing, they try to sweep Black people into people of color. And to be honest, those are two different Black brackets, because the Black fight and people of color fight is two totally different brackets. But that's neither here nor there. When you're organizing Black people, you first have to understand two big things, which are apathy and empathy. So apathy, something that has accrued in Black communities for generation and generations, is the lack of the amplification of distrust in a lot of big organizations. So local government, state government, federal government, time and time again have promised this, have promised that, have promised good healthcare, have promised equity, not equality, equity in a lot of spheres, have promised that police killings will subside, have promised that they will do something to curb gang violence and gun violence, that they will release these fathers, these brothers, these uncles from these penitentiaries. They have promised again, and again, offering little bits of clemency here and firing a cop or putting a cop on leave there, but nobody has ever really done anything that would truly shift how Black people are treated in America. So over time, apathy has garnered up, and it has welled up, and like wealth and like things can be passed down, apathy has been passed down from generation to generation to generation. So if you don't understand apathy, you can't organize Black people, because you don't understand where they're coming from. And that leads into empathy, understanding where people is coming from. Like a lot of people of color and white people feel like Black people want sympathy, which is pity. And Black people don't want pity. We don't need pity. We don't want to be pitied. We want to be understood. We want people to empathize with us, to understand that, yes, we're at a place now that is better than we were before, but we're not equitable. We don't have the same opportunities as our white and people of color counterparts. Even if you put us at the starting line, our starting line is still back here, because there's so much of a gap between us and them. So when you're organizing people, you have to understand where they're coming from. You have to be able to take the time to understand them. It's not going to come easy. You just can't go up to somebody that's coming from poverty, who's coming from trauma, and be like, why aren't you registered to vote? Why haven't you gotten your rights restored? Why aren't you paying attention to this election? Why aren't you doing this and doing that? You have to come to them and understand where they're coming from. They can't focus on an election if they're wondering where their next meal is coming from. They can't focus on an election when there is water leaking or draining from their toilet into their sinks. They can't focus on the next coming election when there's a rat or roach infestation in their tenant buildings, because they're living in slums, because there's nothing better for them to get. You have to understand the people before you even try to organize them. So the best and most effective way is getting real grassroots people, real credible messengers, investing in the returning citizen, investing in those people who come from poverty, who come from trauma, and getting those people to talk to the people that you're trying to get. Because those are the people that are going to connect. Those are the people that are going to know what to say, how to say it, and the time to take. And with that, I can pass it up to
Woo! Woo!
So everything that Kalia just said is very valid. It's true. It's like just more than the truth, really. But I like noticed, and everybody here noticed that, like, you mentioned having apathy. Well, no, not having apathy, because we don't really want to have the apathy. We really want to understand where this apathy comes from. But just like having empathy for the community and the communities that you come from. And that's why I feel like the blueprint when it comes to this is really the Black Panther Party, because they came from their own communities and they witnessed like the violence that happens within. They witnessed like the poverty that like Black people come from within their own communities. So like before they ever even tried to, like go at the government or go at the man or go at the police about it, they were like, we're going to make sure that we like have our people taken care of first. We're going to like set up this free meal program in our neighborhood. We're going to make sure like that the kids are fed. And then not only this, we're going to make sure that the kids are educated. We got like this book list. We got this book list for children, so like we can compartmentalize the issues and make them just conceivable in a way for them. So like you all like before you just get combative with it, which we will get combative because we're Black people and that's like the Black tradition. You also got to understand like your people. You got to understand like what they need. You got to understand their aspirations. You got to understand like their needs, their hopes and dreams. You got to understand just like where they're coming from. So that's basically the empathy part of what like she's talking about. And I know like personally down here, like I'm usually in and out with the Dream Defenders. And like before they ask you to come to any meeting, before they ask you if you want a phone bank for them, like they always make sure like, okay, like, are you good? Like, do you need anything from us? Like if you're feeling like down right now, or if you need a break, like we're not going to force you to do anything, because like that's not how we work. Like we understand that people have lives. We understand that people go through emotional strife. So we're not going to force you into anything, but we're still going to be like organizing every day of the week, doing our thing, and you can come back when you're ready. So I just feel like just good organizing really just comes from an understanding for your people, because if you don't have it, there's no way that everybody's going to like be completely dead set on everything, because we're all just going through stuff, man. It's life.
Showing up, man. Showing up. I saw you down, Roy. I see you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think that's all perfect. That model that the Black Panthers laid out for us about community aid, about mutual aid, helping one another first, alongside that political education that is so necessary for the coalition building and the work that we need to do in order to free ourselves from this state. But I also wanted to respond sort of to one thing that Kalia said about um, I think it's an insulting action that is done when people go into communities without really knowing them, and then just sort of ask the question about, why aren't you voting? Like, you need to vote. You need to do this. You need to do that, especially when it's about voting. Because how are you going to, like, somebody who is worried about the bill, worried about rent, worried about getting food for their kids, and then you're going to tell them that they need to go and vote, when this person who you are telling them to go and vote, in no way are they going to help out with paying their medical bills or helping them get food on the table at all. They're actually going to be the opposite of helpful towards that. But it's always this weird focus on that electoralism, and I think that that is a part of what Joseph was just saying about good organizing being not necessarily so first focused on whatever your own end goal is, whatever you want, whatever place you want to bring these people to, but first addressing like this is where you're at and meeting people exactly where they are at, before you try to push or pull them anywhere.
Go ahead. I think y'all got it. Y'all, I told you I could sit back. Y'all had it.
But to piggyback off of what Don Roy was saying, it is a weird focus on the electoral part of organizing. Like people will come into communities. I live in a predominantly Black community, so people will come into communities, and major political parties or organization will push all their canvassers and all their organizers into our community to kind of garner the Black vote, to get them out to vote in state, federal, and even local elections, but then would just leave. And while these people are fighting against gentrification and fighting against redlining and fighting against food deserts and stuff like that. Nobody is there to organize them to advocate for themselves. They're just organizing them to go vote for somebody. So another good thing about organizing is being present all the time. Like, don't just organize them when it's time to vote. Organize them when it's time to speak out for themselves. Teach them how to advocate for themselves. Teach them that it's bigger than just a vote. Yeah, we voted for Biden, but did you vote for your senator? Did you vote for your delegate? Did you vote for your congressman? Like, making sure that people understand that we vote for president, but we also have to put the people in place that are going to listen to us, which are our Congress people and our senators, the people that we have to go talk to get our stuff done and put into place. But just being sure that you're present all the time, teaching people and organizing people all the time, making sure that they are aware of what's going on in their community and aware of how they can fight back against the things that they don't like or they wish to change.
Cool, man. Man, y'all make me smile. I'm just happy. But getting our officials elected and putting the right people in place, there's been a lot of discussion about AOC and with recent talks, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I hope I said that right. I told y'all French is trash, Spanish is trash, English is decent enough. So AOC and the forced to vote movement, which it's to have, in order for Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi to continue being Speaker of the House, there has to be a forced vote on Medicare for all for legislation. And the logic behind that is we need to see who's exactly with the American people and who isn't with the American people. And everyone who says no will be seen in public for what they are, and which is basically making sure that no American, well, not all Americans, receive health care during a global pandemic that has shocked America not like never before seen, and let it go on record, knowing that the vote probably won't pass because once it gets past the House, it'll reach the Senate and Mitch McConnell. Well, I could speak on McConnell, but it won't go through. But it's more so just to see where our ducks line up as we go forward. And the question here is like, when it comes to electing Black people or anyone that you believe is representative of your ideology in politics, do you think that politicians are able to change the institutions, or do you think that the institutions eventually change the politicians? Or if not change, then simply break them and they won't be able to go on except continue to move on within the doldrums of American bureaucracy? And I saw you, Don Roy, so you got it count right.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question posed. Whether it's I don't think that any one individual can change the superstructure of American politics. Like that's just way not even ambitious of a goal. It's just not something that can be done. Just simply because of the like sheer numbers of people in the American government. But also I would argue that like AOC or anyone else who came in hot, they weren't necessarily changed by the institution. This was them. This is what they always were. They're just kind of showing their true colors right now, by saying we aren't going to force the vote because like some weird political explanation, whatever explanation it is, like they won't get the committee assignment that they like. Nancy will be mean to them, or the Democratic Party will try to primary them. It's kind of sad to see, but I think it's part of who they are. You have to be a certain type of individual to kind of go and enter those spaces, because you have to know that you can't change it. And AOC, like, for what it's worth, for the most part, I like AOC. And I really don't like American politicians. Like, I really don't like American politicians, but AOC is on kind of on my good side. But I do think that as somebody who is popular with young people, popular with progressives, she should use that, and she should say, yeah, we're going to tell Nancy Pelosi that we won't support you unless you're showing the American people that you care about their lives and their healthcare during, like you said, a global pandemic that has taken over now 300,000 people from us.
And it's still rising by the day.
And this is where I am on the situation because, like as constituents of like the American government, they're supposed to serve us. That's literally what's in the name of, being a governing force. You're supposed to demand from your politicians, but I never expect much from American politicians simply because of how the American government is set up and how it has always worked for Black people. We could go into like just decades of like Black votes for certain politicians who promise certain things and then renege on those promises later. But my thing with AOC and the squad and not forcing the vote really is, it's just like if you go and like look at the things that AOC and like different members of the squad have said before, they always have had this radical air to themselves where they say, yeah, I don't really care if like I'm sacrificing my role in the House, or I don't really care if just like what I'm doing the vast majority of people don't agree with, or the vast majority of Congress doesn't agree with. Like, I'm going to stand upon like my morals, what I believe in and what I believe should pass, and I'm going to bring it to them whether or not they like it. And like that's what they said. That's what they said. But now we're seeing that now if it like sacrifices their power, their role that they have now, or if they believe that just doing anything that like the constituents are asking of them will compromise themselves, then they won't. That's just really just the gripe that I have with them, because I feel like you can't say one thing and then do another. But here's what they know. And here's the thing. Like, they come with this radical air because they know that that's popular with a lot of people, especially like in the areas that they represent. They know that like what's going to get them elected is this very radical, this very, I'm going to push for this, I'm going to push for that, I'm going to represent you, not these corporations and not like this government like kind of thing. They know that attitude, like people like that attitude. They know that they will not get elected if they like are campaigning and they tell their constituents, it's like, yeah, I agree with you guys, I understand your needs, but I know that if I get into like this office, like whether I'm representing some district in New York, they're not going to let me do this, and that. So it's like, really, you're kind of just going back on a promise to the people that like you promised to represent when you say things like, oh, if there's ever a pandemic and you guys need a stimulus, like each and every time I'm going to, argue that you guys need $1,200 every single month that it goes on. And then actually what you do is be like, oh, well, yeah, 600 definitely isn't enough, but it's what like the government can do right now. Like, no, you should condemn that. Like, if you're the one person that voted against it and they pass it in full, that $600 bill that's not going to do anything for anybody in the United States as we're losing our jobs and losing our homes, you should vote against it. If it doesn't pass, condemn it. Don't just be like, hey, like, we tried and we gave you guys what you get. No, you didn't. And you didn't try hard enough. Like, you should have standed on your morals. Now you're losing the support of the people because you didn't say what you were actually about. So yeah, that's what I don't like liars, man. I don't like liars.
I like that. But yeah, I feel like institutions always end up changing the politician just because politicians never leverage the people that voted for them to do more than just vote for them. Like, they never leverage the people like, this is what's going on in these chambers. I'm proposing this legislation for you, but these are what these politicians are saying. Are you available to come testify in front of this congressperson, in front of this council, in front of this people, so that they can hear the stories that you guys are telling me? They never leveraged the constituent base that voted for them. And so within all of this, I feel like there will always be this kind of power struggle because the institution will always kind of be stronger. Well, not kind of, will always be stronger and more powerful and more structured than the individuals that are coming in there to change it. There's always political pacts like ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, which is big business that funnels policy and stuff like that. So it will be extremely difficult for individual or even a small group of individuals to change the construct of the whole institution. but it can be possible if politicians leverage the people that voted them in.
Man, Donroy, you got it. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think that is a little bit of. I'm gonna be on the contrary a little bit. I think that it's optimistic to think that even if American politicians are going back to their constituents and saying, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. Let's do something together about it." I think that even still, just the structure that it is still not going to work for most people. For most people, because racial capitalism doesn't work for most people, and that's what we have. And as long as we have that in front of us, I just don't see a way where most people can succeed. So if the Democratic Party is beholden to corporate donors, and the Republican Party obviously, um like obviously, and AOC is beholden to Nancy and the rest of the Democratic Party, even if she doesn't directly have corporate donors, now she's like secondhand beholden to corporate donors and upholding their interests as well. So it's too massive for just one to bring down. And I had another thing that I wanted to add, but it's completely slipped my mind. So
Cool.
What I wanted to add was a historical aspect of this.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
What we're talking about now, this is why they brought the Confederacy back. This is why they let the government back in. Because
The Confederacy?
Huh? Yeah.
You say historical conscience and then just didn't like set us up for that at all. He was like, this is why they brought the Confederacy back. I was
I'm
like,
gonna dive right into it. This is why the Confederacy, because it has like just what word am I thinking of? It has implications, like even now. But I'm telling you, this is why that they allowed the Confederate like army, well, like the past Confederate soldiers and the past Confederate generals back into the American government. Because in the districts that like black people took over as soon as like they got rid of that whole slavery thing in the United States, I mean, ostensibly because we still got them in the prisons, black people had a majority in a lot of these counties. Had a majority in a lot of these counties, and we had radical ideas, and we were putting radical people into office. They nipped that in the butt 10 years later because they realized that if that kept going, the entire structure of how the American government looks today would be completely flipped upside down. Because you can't have like, you know, a majority of people like in this, you know, governmental space arguing for these things that, you know, just like call for an entire upheaval of how you do things around here. If that would have ever continued, we would be looking at an entirely different world today. And that's why they continue to suppress not the black vote, because I don't really believe in electoral like politics, but the black voice. They're always going to co-opt it. They're always going to muddy it. They're always going to whitewash it because they realize that, you know, if we really let these ideas, if we really let these just politics, revolutionary politics into the mainstream, there's not like much you can do to suppress it if you don't like nip it at the butt from its root. So, yeah.
Word. It's a word. It's a word. See, I've just been quiet all show, man. Like, y'all carry it. I might have to do this again. I'm glad it's gonna be a Thursday, but oh man. So we're about to wrap up a little bit, but before we go, there's one last question. Just one last pondering here. One last pondering, and it's this idea that when it comes to any sort of group of people, there are three types of power when it comes to nation building. There's militaristic power, so there's military power, which is then coupled or followed by political power, which is what we're discussing today. And the basis of all of this is economic power. And essentially, after Black people were given the right to vote in 1965, there was a certain occurrence that happened with a lot of Black politicians springing up once more, except this time, as was different from Reconstruction, was there weren't any Black businesses to go to as well. And there was a complete dearth of Black economic power due to being left out of World War II implements, as well as Jim Crow segregation running rampant for about 100 years. So Black people didn't have economic power, and our militaristic power was, how you say, not that good on a mass scale. So we see what happens with when political power is left to stand alone. And my question would be is, we understanding that Black people and guns, that doesn't go well with the US. So I'm gonna push the militarism question for a little bit later. But how would you say that it would be, how would you go in understanding that political power is only understood when it's backed by economic power, because capitalism? How would you suggest that we go on to build this political economic stability?
Within capitalism,
For now, the revolution comes soon, brother. Ogun.
I'm gonna give it up to somebody else right now because I still got to develop it in my mind. Because capitalism is it's a tricky question. So anybody got anything to say?
Got it.
Capitalism is very tricky because it's a system built up off of debt. Like everybody, like the country's in debt. Credit is essentially debt. So it's something that's built up off of debt. You're essentially always going to be in debt to somebody. But in a capitalistic sense, it would have to be educating Black people fully, truly, in a financial literacy space. So getting people to understand credit, getting people to understand that once you get a credit card, you just can't let it sit there. Once you get a credit card, you can't max it out every month, even if you can pay for it. Getting people to understand home ownership, getting out of the perpetual renter mindset, getting people into owning a home, understanding mortgages, understanding refinancing, understanding real estate. It comes with a lot of education in order to get true economic power, because the wealth gap is so huge. Because while white people were building their wealth with the New Deal programs and implementations, and Black people were getting redlined and refused on loans and things of that nature, they were being educated and helped out. And if they failed, they could claim bankruptcy and try again, while Black people were just stuck in this constant survival mode. So in this capitalistic society, we have to educate our people on understanding the really weird debt system that America has in place in order to get to economic power. And even on the militaristic side, like you said, white America really doesn't like Black people owning guns, and they try to pin Black on Black crime as the stipulation to why Black people can't own guns, when color or race on race crime happens in all communities at about the same rate. They just over glorify or try to demonize Black people, but that's a whole nother situation. But militaristic power, just educating the Black men who do own weapons on how to properly use them first, will be a start. And then after learning how to properly use them, learning how to, join together and band together would be something, that could happen in the future. But as far as economics go, we have to train our people on this weird debt system that America has before we can even think about getting into a space where we could fund our own political parties and independent parties, or even elect our own candidates and stuff.
I got you. I think I saw Jody and then Don Roy, and then we're gonna have to. So Jody, you got it.
Okay, so I feel because her solutions, like, they were very valid. In order to just bring about economic power in the Black community, you have to educate people on the economics first. But like, one thing that I really do want to point out is that, like, Black people try very hard to be financially literate, and like, it's like not like that we're not into it. It's just that it's really hard, and the American structure just makes it super hard. So I feel like, and these would be legislative, so of course, like, we'd have to go to make like these demands, and of course they're really radical demands, so like they'd be pretty hard to get, like the American government to pass them. But I think it would require an abolition of the use of property taxes in the allocation of funding of education, because like, Black people are never going to have like the parity with white people when it comes to education if we're continuing to go off like wealth. We don't have the same amount of wealth that they have in these communities, and it typically isn't just easy to build on like a mass scale where you have like an entire community building itself up that way. like you'll have like 1 or 2, 3 people gradually, and then maybe like 200 years later you'll have like, oh, all of these people educated. But it just becomes a lot easier if you just level the playing field. I also think that a lot of top tier universities, and I'm talking about these PWIs, I'm talking about these Ivy Leagues that built up their endowments through slave profits, through the use of slave labor, dropping off the backs of black people. And then for after that was abolished, like not allowing them into their schools for another century, and to this day, not allowing us into their schools because, you know, like hardly any of us qualify to get into their schools because of the elitist standards that they imposed on us. And I've been teaching for the past century that we're biologically inferior anyway. They need to, one, own up to that history. Like their own professors have written about it. Two, they need to pay reparations and go out into the communities that they are actively oppressing and give back. Because even to this day, I think it's Yale University. They're in New Haven, which has like, you know, a big black community there because it's a kind of an urban city. And basically, I was talking to a friend, and they were like, "Yeah, if you live in New Haven, you really only have money or are educated if you work at Yale. Everyone else in the community is poor, and like Yale actively like suppresses the unions in that area. They actively aid in the gentrification of the area surrounding Yale. So because universities like that have a lot of resources. If they want to like help the communities around, they have like the capital to do it. They have the just manpower to do it, because not only do they have their faculty, they also have their top tier Mensa like qualifying students there. So like they need to chip in when it comes to that. And then also I feel like HBCUs can definitely play a role. Like currently DC has a literacy crisis. DC is the chocolate city. DC has HBCU students. It is not hard to set up an initiative where you like send students out and send faculty out and like just aid, like educate, help, like just chip in. It's really not hard to do. It's just the structure of how we have it just makes it so hard to do so. And you know, a lot of people are greedy. They don't really want to share capital, knowledge, or wealth. So I'm gonna bring it on to somebody else.
It's Don, and then we my fault, Don Roy, and then we can dip out. But
I think to answer the question at hand, I think that it is impossible to build solutions from capitalism. Like
He's right though.
But I'm still gonna engage with the question because for two reasons. Because number one, because it was a question at hand, and number two, because that is the material conditions that are before us. So that is to some extent what we have to work with. So it's kind of it's a really tough situation to grapple, especially for me, because if you do truly believe like there aren't solutions that are going to come out of capitalism, you have to deal with thinking and working outside of that framework, but also again addressing what is right in front of you and being able to deal with what's within it. And I hear and I see everything about financial literacy, and like that's important, that's cool. However, no amount of financial literacy is going to make up the ground that was lost by slavery and institutionalized racism. Like that is real. That the wealth gaps that exist will not be made up by us being fully educated on how to manage debt and buy a home. I think that the steps that need to be taken within capitalism are things sort of like unionization, making sure that people at your workplace are like class conscious and can collectively bargain for better wages. Making sure that people in your community, the organizing stuff that we were talking about earlier, people in your community are taken care of, so you are, less reliant on the capitalistic structures that are claiming to help people out. But I suppose that like it's a huge question to try to deal with, like how to get up out of this. And there's really just so much. But I think that the solution can never ever be capitalism, because
Right.
or within capitalism, because this system was literally built
my fault. It was a lot. It was a lot. It was.
Big
Keep
comment.
going, but this is a huge message. I didn't know it was gonna be that big.
They covered their faces.
They covered the whole bottom half.
Yeah,
I didn't
where'd
think it was
that
gonna be that big.
But like this system was built to oppress us, and I think that when thinking about what Black people need to do, we also need to fully recognize that like white people are responsible for this. Like we do need to, you know, get up and like do something to help ourselves out because
Please
they
say it
aren't
again. Please say it again. 'Cause I
they
don't think
aren't
the people heard
out.
you.
So we
Please say it.
need to remember and recognize that white people are responsible for this. I'll say it 1,000 times
They did it.
because it's the truth. And was it? I think it's Kwame Ture, Howard University, HU. You know, he was the one who was saying whenever you're analyzing the position of marginalized groups, it's important that you I'm like misquoting, paraphrasing, but it's important that you recognize the oppressor and the action that the oppressor has taken to put them in that position. So like this conversation cannot be had without sort of being like, hey, like yes, there are things we need to do, um but however, this is the reason why we are here, and we also need to address that. And that's why I think that there's a lot of issues with the United States of America because the United States has never addressed its own like existence being completely racist.
They don't want to. They don't want to admit that.
Oh, they never will.
Oh, they're never gonna admit
Because-
that. But know what I'm saying? Our gap will never be fully closed, even close to it, if we don't get the reparations, the true reparations that we truly deserve from all the institutions that oppressed us, not just the governments, but the schools, the neighborhoods, everybody.
Now I remember when you were talking about I wanted to keep my mouth shut on building militaristic power because
Not yet. That's different.
yeah, because
I'll tell you, because this week is the electoral thing, but
yeah,
trust me. Later.
when Fred and Asada started telling people to shoot back, we saw that they ran into some issues. So I don't want to tell myself anything.
But as you can see, at the 1 minute and 1 hour 32-minute mark. So we've had a fruitful discussion. I held y'all for that hour. I had a great time being here with y'all. I'm over here blushing like a kid in the candy store. Tentative name still, but drum roll. Okay, y'all wasn't gonna do the drum roll for me. That's cool. Drums yet, but they under the Christmas tree. So welcome to the Council of Scholars. Welcome to the Mbongi Goodfellas. That's probably one of the ones I like the best. Welcome. Any final words before we sort of wrap up, dude?
Just thank you for allowing me to be up here. This was a really, really fruitful discussion. I like being the catalyst to get the fire burning under Don Roy and Joseph's feet because they snapped every time. Like they never came without the heat. So I appreciate being on such a impactful and powerful panel. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm super grateful, super appreciative to be in this outstanding scholarly Black space that I was just invited to.
Absolutely, man. Thank you, cats, for coming on. Thank y'all. I mean, y'all apart, like, bro. Y'all can come back anytime y'all want, bro. Like, password. Y'all can just do what you need to, because this was great. Like this right here. Like, we keep raising the bar every week. So whoever come on Thursday, y'all got a lot to do. Y'all got a lot to do. But right now, we're gonna let Kalia, we're gonna let my brother Don Roy leave a little bit. And then we about to hit y'all with that favorite thing we love to do, and that's these words from our sponsors, and then we'll be right back.
Smart kids make our world better. At Heavenly Hearts, we believe that the right foundation is key to our future leader success. with our 4 key learning principles, which are inclusive learning environment, early exposure to financial literacy, community engagement, science and technology with engineering, art, and math labs will enrich each one of our future leaders as well as the community they are part of. In these unprecedented times, the $59 billion childcare industry has been dramatically impacted by the pandemic. Heavenly Hearts has currently implemented several advanced health and safety precautions to protect our children and staff at our current licensed facility in Chesapeake, Virginia. Our new location will continue to use advanced technology to protect our children from this and future threats to their health and safety, as our mission is to educate, empower, and equip our students with the necessary foundation to be holistically successful throughout life. We invite you to get involved. As an investor or community partner, you can help in a variety of ways. Contact Serena Mann at 757-254-8156.
Welcome back. I told you we were going to be right back. So before you wrap up with the rest of your night, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, Yelp it if you want to. Just get that word out, because if you saw what Brother Don Roy had to say, Sister Kalia and Brother Joseph, and me just sort of in the back, being able to just watch the whole tapestry of vocabulary play out in such complexity and love, then you'd understand that more people need to see this, man. We had great viewership all the way through, but the thing is, we said every week we like to rise, double, triple, quadruple, quintuple, octuple, everything like that. So we're gonna wrap things up and get it. I said wrap things up and touch the rock. That's a subtle one, but I'm glad you guys were here with us today. I'm glad. I mean, this is probably one of my favorite ones, man, because you really get to see a lot of how our political life is dictated by our economic life. And then that from there, we got to basically, we laid a really good groundwork for Thursday. And when I said that whoever comes on Thursday, you got your work cut out for you, absolutely, because Kalia, Don Roy, and Joseph, they covered a lot of ground in like such a short time. Because really, I have more questions, but I know that everybody has a place to be. Some of y'all were a little bit hungry, waiting, sitting through us. I know. So, some of everyone, little people are excited, got the whole Kwanzaa, Christmas going on a little bit. So, you got other things to do. You might want to build a snowman real quick if you have snow, or an airman if you don't. But we just happy that you were with us tonight and we're able to fellowship and chill and listen and add that great perspective, because this is an intergenerational thing. We have the HBCU students as the panelists, but we have everybody in the community as a guest with us. And I'm just happy to be here, man. Thank you for being with 2050 and beyond. Thank you, CCIA, for being here. And with that, we out.